Chapter 19. It was the first Monday of the month, which meant I had a student council meeting. Since nobody paid any attention to freshmen, I sat in the back and killed time writing a fake football article. I didn't miss football, but I missed getting creative about it. On Tuesday, I heard the following conversation in English class. Julia: "Did you see the announcement?" Kelly: "Yeah, this is so exciting. Are you trying out?" Julia: "Of course. I love acting. Are you?" Kelly: "Absolutely. I've been a play every year since 5th grade." I checked the bulletin board after class. The poster was already halfway covered with other stuff, but I could see the important details. They were putting on A Tale of Two Cities. I guess someone had turned the book into a play. Auditions were on Thursday, which meant I had 2 days to talk myself out of doing something stupid. After my experience with student council and the newspaper, I'd have to be a total idiot to try out for a play just because Julia might be in it. Not that I cared. I'd pretty much stopped thinking about her. At least not every waking moment, or every sleeping moment. Besides, I didn't know the first thing about acting, though it didn't look all that hard. I'd already given a speech, a successful speech, for that matter, that had launched my career in the exciting and glamorous world of student politics. Acting wasn't much different. Look at all the actors who ran for office. I bet the cast spends lots of time hanging out together. I'd been taking the Sheldon Murnblower shield for granted since it had been functioning perfectly for months. But Wednesday morning, he wasn't on the bus. Thanks to that, I got smacked in the head a couple of times. To make things worse, the bus was so overheated that I kept nodding off. So each slap was like some kind of medieval wake-up torture. I saw Lee at her locker before homeroom. The sign was still there. The one that said, "This is not a locker." Ignore it, I told myself. I started to walk past, but I couldn't help myself. Maybe the head smacks had jarred something loose. What's that supposed to mean? It was a stupid question. There was no reason to believe it was anything more than a meaningless slogan. "It means nothing and everything," she said. My response must have gone straight from my gut to my mouth because it never passed through my brain. That's a bunch of crap. It sounds deep, but it's just words. I could feel myself ready to start ranting. I hated it when people tossed a bunch of words at you and pretended there was some sort of deep meaning. Words were too important to be used like blobs of paint. I mean, when someone can come up with stuff as amazing as caverns measureless to man, people have no excuse for spouting gibberish and calling it art. But I stopped dead and clamped my mouth shut when I remembered the bandages I'd seen on her wrists. I sure didn't want to be the one who pushed her into some kind of bottomless depression. To my surprise, Lee smiled. "Just a bunch of words," she said. "That's the point. It's a meta-statement. Words about words. Get it?" "It's still crap," I said, but without any anger in my voice. 90% of everything is crap." She patted the sign. "And I'll bet, despite the fact that you're one of the few people in the school who actually care about knowledge for its own sake, you can't tell me where that quote comes from." I had no idea, but I wasn't going to admit that to Lee, or stand around all day talking to her. So I took off. When I got home, I tried to find out who said that quote. I searched for it on the internet, but our computer was getting completely flaky. Thursday, in English, Mr. Franca asked if anyone was auditioning for the school play. "It's a great way to get a different insight into the written word," he said, "not to mention a chance to spend quality time with Charles Dickens." 5 kids raised their hands, including Julia. I wasn't one of them. That afternoon, I noticed Lee had put a new sign on her locker. It said, "This is a locker." December 6th. Auditions for the school play are tonight at 7. But I've learned my lesson. No way I'm going. I can't act. I have no interest in theater. My voice still cracks once in a while. And I'm far too busy already. I made it to 6:30 before I asked Dad for a ride to school. "Tell you what," he said, "I have to go to the hardware store. I'll drop you off, get what I need, then swing back and see if you're done. How's that?" "Great." When Dad dropped me off, kids were just starting to show up. Mine was the third name on the list, but the place filled up pretty quickly after that. At 7, Mr. Purchall, the director, got onto the stage, thanked everyone for coming, and gave the usual pep talk about trying your best and accepting that not everyone would make it. "All right," he said, "let's get started." He grabbed the clipboard and called the first name. Then he walked over to the piano that was sitting to the left of the side of the stage. A kid, carrying a sheet of paper, walked to the middle of the stage. When the kid nodded, Mr. Purchall started playing music, and the kid started singing. What in the world? I looked around me. Everyone had sheets of paper. I glanced to my right. It was music. By then, the second person was on stage. "I thought we were doing A Tale of Two Cities," I whispered to the kid on my left. He looked over and nodded. "Yeah, but this is the musical version. Didn't you learn a song?" Musical? No way. This was Dickens, the French Revolution, death and tragedy, not song and dance. I had to get out, but I was in the middle of the row. I looked around. Oh my God, Julia was 2 rows behind me, along with Kelly. "Scott Hudson," Mr. Purchall called. Maybe if I just stayed in my seat, he'd move on, like at the deli counter when they get to a number after the person has left. Kelly gave me a little wave and said, "Break a leg." I should be so lucky. I got up and walked over to the director. "I didn't learn any of the songs," I said. Maybe that would be the end of it. "No problem." He bent over and thumbed through a pile of sheet music on the floor next to his bench. "You know This Land Is Your Land, right?" I wanted to lie, but every kid who's made it through 3rd grade knew that song. I nodded. Mr. Purchall pointed toward the center of the stage. "Go for it." I should have run off right then, or pretended to have a burst appendix. Instead, I made the horrible mistake of trying to sing. I could see the shocked look on everyone's face when I let out my first note. Shock turned to horror as I produced a second note that was totally unrelated to the first. It was like they'd seen a small animal get cut in half by a table saw. My voice cracked on the 3rd note, and never uncracked until the painful end. When I was done, Mr. Purchall didn't say a word. He just sort of nodded. I hurried off the stage. I waited by the outside doors for Dad. I could hear the voices floating out from the auditorium. Julia sang like an angel. "How'd it go?" Dad asked when he picked me up. "Fine," I lied. When I saw Mr. Purchall in the hall the next day, I ducked my head and avoided his eyes. No point in reminding him of what was probably the worst experience of his theatrical career. As I started to dash past him, he said, "Got a minute?" "Sure." I wondered whether he was going to ask me to take a vow never to sing in public again. "How'd you like a spot on the stage crew?" "Stage crew?" He nodded. "Show business is more than just actors and singers." I guess he felt sorry for me. "I'm pretty busy," I told him. "This won't interfere with any of your activities. I promise. Our schedule is very flexible. We could really use your help. The crew is the backbone of the troupe." "What do they do?" "Not much. Mostly just make sure things run smoothly. The whole experience is a lot of fun. The crew and cast are like one big family. You'll see." One big family. It sounded perfect. I'd get to hang out with the cast, and I wouldn't have to sing or dance, or learn any lines. What could be better than that? I'd probably be able to do my homework while I sat around backstage. "Okay, sure, I'll give it a try." I could even offer to help Julia learn her lines. "Great." He flashed me the same smile I'd gotten from Mr. Franco when he hooked me into picking the topic for April. Then, as he walked off, he whistled a tune all the way down the hall. December 8th. The folks went out to buy some furniture for the nursery. They buy stuff every week. I think you're going to have a bad impact on the cash flow around here. I hope we can recover our investment when I sell you. Who'd have thought something as simple as a crib would bring 2 skilled mechanics to their knees? I was smart enough not even to go in the room. Dad was kneeling on the floor, surrounded by bolts, nuts, screws, slats, dowels, and odd pieces of metal twisted into all sorts of strange shapes. Bobby was next to him, holding a screwdriver in one hand and a pair of pliers in the other. A direction sheet lay on the floor between them. Mum hovered above them, her arms crossed on her ever-expanding stomach. "Will it be ready by May?" she asked. Dad glanced at her, nodded, then slid the directions in front of Bobby. "Read me the first step." Bobby pointed to the top of the sheet. "No need. There's a diagram. Directions are stupid anyhow. The people who write them have never put anything together in their lives." I thought Dad would get annoyed, but he said, "I think you're right." He moved the sheet out of his way. "We won't be needing this." Mum sighed and glanced up at the ceiling. I went downstairs. A half-hour later, Mum joined me and started making a batch of cookie dough. I didn't ask her how it was going. Every 5 or 10 minutes, I could hear Bobby shout something. Once I heard the clatter of a tool hitting the floor. 2 hours later, when I went upstairs and peeked inside the room, they had something in front of them that Dr. Seuss might have drawn to imprison a baby Sneetch. They seemed to be taking it apart. Sunday, when I looked in, the whole crib was assembled. There were a couple of extra parts lying on the floor, but I figured they weren't important. Monday, when I got to school, I saw a crowd of kids around the side door to the stage. I recognized some of them from the audition. I hung back, since I figured they'd probably recognize me, too. After the crowd thinned, I went over to see who'd gotten what role. I read through the list twice, before the reality of it sunk in. "I am such an idiot," I muttered as I slunk off toward homeroom. December 10th. Guess who isn't in the play? Take a wild guess. What's that? I can't hear you. Speak up. You're really going to have to shout if you want your voice to get through the amniotic fluid. Yep, Julia didn't make the cast. Not even the chorus. I can't freaking believe it. Neither can she, I'd bet. Especially since Kelly got a part. Julia can't be very happy about that either. Kelly sings like a frog. To make this whole thing even more special, I found out that the members of the stage crew have to be at every rehearsal. Worse, it's not just for a month or two. We'll start in January and rehearse all the way till April, which I guess makes sense since this is going to be the spring musical. For someone who reads so many books, you'd think I'd have paid attention to those words. You're probably laughing your head off as you read this. I guess I should remind you that right now, your head is transparent and about the size of a walnut, or maybe a grapefruit at best. Rehearsals are in the evening, later than basketball or wrestling, so Mr. Purchall told the truth. It won't interfere with any of my activities, just with my life. By the way, I hope you don't roll around too much in your sleep. I'm not sure your crib can take the stress.